All right, so let me see here. I mean, people will still be rolling in, but we can get started here in a little bit. So I would like everybody to kind of stay on mute. It's a large group. So on the end, there will be an option to ask questions. You can also use the chat if you want to kind of ask questions, and then at the end, we'll kind of at the end of the presentation, we'll try to answer all your questions here. So let me get started here. Let's see here. All right. So we'll start with the system. It's like I said, it's one of the easier systems on the market. Here you can just see, from installation of the grids to the trays to the plant. So there's not a whole lot to it, but these are really the components of the NextGen living wall system. So we got the backing, the grid, which has a lot of benefits. One of the large benefits actually of the grid is that you can basically install it on any wall surface, and you also have less penetration points than with some other products on the market. So with our system, you only have 4 penetration points for 4 trays. Some of the competitive systems on the market, you would have 4 penetration points, per tray. So that's definitely kind of a time saving from an installation standpoint. Then we have the trays. The trays attach to the backing. And then we have the overflow tubes and the leaf screens, and we'll kind of explain all the functions of these, all the different components. So I still have some people coming in. So before we get to the meat of this, let's see if get some more folks admitted to the presentation. There we go. All right, so let's get kicked off here. So we have the grids, like I said earlier. So we have 3 different types of grids. They all accommodate different types of trays. And then if I can just ask people just to keep themselves muted, I would really appreciate it. So we have 3 grids. We have the grid 1675 is our smallest, accommodates the 8-inch wide tray. It's for the PT 2013-12. So all these numbers here, so 1312, 1675, it's all measurements in metric. And the reason for that is because the system was really first developed for Europe. So that's why we have all the metric numbers. We got the grid 5075, and here you can see the different trays that holds. We have the grid 8075, and that holds 2 different size trays. So the PT 100, 1312 is for the 6-inch, and then we got the PT 100, 1519, which holds the 8-inch plants. So we got the different size grids, and then we have different size or different types of models of trays as well. So we got a model for 4-inch plants, which we only have in one size. So that's the 20-inch wide. And then we have the trays for the 6-inch plants, which is our most popular, tray model. And the reason for that is because you have so many different options to kind of almost create any size living wall. And the nice thing about the 6-inch is also you have a corner tray available. So you can go on the outside corner as well. Then we have the 8-inch tray, which also only comes in one size. So that comes in the 40-inch. So that's all the options you would have with the different models. So the grids, like I said earlier, the grids makes the system easy, but it also makes it somewhat complicated because you have to measure out, lay out the grids when you install it. Typically, we would pre-cut, so the grids can be pre or cut depending on how many. If you only need to add 1, 2, or 3 trays, you would have to cut the grid because one grid holds four trays. So that's what you can see here. So each grid, so all 3 grids can be cut in this fashion. You can attach it to drywall. Plywood is the easiest to attach to. You can also attach to masonry wall as well. And I'll go into it a little down in the presentation how to lay out the grids. So you can kind of see what the configuration would look like. So on the bottom you can see and this is all for the 6-inch plant trays, which that's our most popular version. So that's probably the version you would work with most. And here you can kind of see all the different configurations you can do with it. On the bottom, you can see how it fits a full grid. So there's 4 on each grid, and then you can cut it to accommodate either 3, 2, or 1. So some of the confusion sometimes, and I've had some questions from from you guys. What's the deal with the numbers on the 5075 and 8075 grid? The smaller grid, the 1675, does not have numbers. But when these grids were developed, the idea was to have flexibility with how many trays you could fit on a grid. You really only would need the number 4 because there's 4 trays that fit on a grid. So you really want to insert your trays in the number 4 grid alone. It really doesn't make sense to do less than that or do more if you're building a living wall. So just keep in mind when you see the number 4, that's where you insert your tray into. So from the installation standpoint, like I said earlier, this is really the hardest part of the living wall. So what you really want to start doing is laying out the wall itself. So you would measure the width of your wall, which is on the bottom, and then on the left side you would also mark where that wall starts. And I'll go into the measurements in between the different grids here in a little bit. But typically what you want to do, you start from left to right, and then you kind of go up. You kind of stack the grids. The nice thing about the system is that you only really need to level the bottom grids, right? So like you see here, and then you can kind of stack the grids up neatly. So you don't really have to worry that, with some competitive tray systems, when you start installing, when you install just individual trays, you're going to run into the risk that if you, hold on here, just if you go up and you don't level each tray, sometimes you can kind of drift off. With the NextGen system, you don't really have that issue. So if you level the bottom, the top will be fine, and it's because the trays fit in their in the grid itself, everything will be level. So the biggest challenge really with installation is that some of the trays, like with the PT75 and the PT100, the trays are wider than the grid. So you have to accommodate the space, right? So if you would put these grids too close, and this is like the PT75 next to the PT100, if they would be too close, then your trays would not fit. And then going back to, you laying out your grid here, and that's why you mark, where you all starts. So if you have a PT100 or 75, that would stick out a little bit more here on the left side. So you kind of have to accommodate to have enough space there. So I got the measurements here, and I can share that. We'll share this presentation with everybody, so you'll have all these numbers. But here you can see all the measurements, for all the spacing you would need between the different modules. So if you have a, PT75 next to a PT75, in between the grids, it needs to be 10 inches. So keep that in mind. Some people do like to hang on, or they like to hang a bottom tray on the bottom. So kind of lay it out that way. That's a possibility as well. So just kind of, it's up to what you're more, comfortable with. So, but like I said, from the installation standpoint, that's really the hard part. So if after that, it's really easy going. So I do provide shop drawings as well. So if you have a project and you would like to have the measurements kind of measured out on shop drawings, that's something we can provide as well. So here you can see have a project where we kind of lay out the measurements, so you don't you have everything kind of done for you, so you're sure you have all these spaces correct. There's some tolerances between the trays you can do. So if you are trying to get to an exact measurements, for the width, you can space out the trays a little bit. So typically about an inch they can be spread out. And if that's the case, if that's the case for installation, we do also provide those measurements on the shop drawing. So you have everything you need to have a smooth installation. So we have an option as for the side panels, and it's a popular option for smaller installations. For large installations, typically you would have more of a custom built trim. The side panels are super simple. They come with a adhesive, with Velcro adhesive. So you would actually attach the Velcro, like you can see here on the top left picture. On the top, there's a piece of Velcro on the bottom, and then you would have that same, attachment to the side panels. The one thing you have to be really careful for is that you really push or make that connection. Really, you have to push hard. The Velcro is designed to hold that weight. I've had people complain that it comes loose, it falls off, and that's because they have not really connected that Velcro correctly. It does take some force to make that connection. So keep that in mind when you do this installation, that you really hear that click. It has to really click in. The side panels come in different colors, but the white is really our basic, just the standard color. But it's an easy way to add trim. But like I said, the biggest trick for this is make sure that Velcro really clicks in, because if the Velcro does not click, you have the risk of the side panels coming loose. So accessories. So we got the leaf screen, which comes with the trays. You just have to attach it to the top of the overflow tube. We've got the plant wicks, which the plant wicks are made out of a material that's similar to kind of a magic marker. So it will typically, it should not become hydrophobic. Some other felt type wicks will become hydrophobic when they totally dry out. With our wicks, you don't have to worry about it. The one thing you do have to do is use two. So typically the wicks are long. You cut them in half, and then you put 2 wicks in the bottom of your grow pot. The wicks are really used to kind of boost your plants or bring your plants out of the tray a little bit. Especially if you have some short, grow pots. This is 6-inch grow pots. They come in different sizes, right? I think you guys are all familiar with that there's not really a standard. So a 6-inch is not a 6-inch. So we have the booster that gets dropped in. So this is the back of the tray. So you can see how the booster just drops in, and then the plant sits on top, and it kind of pushes out the plant a little bit more, which I like anyways, because it really makes the wall look nicer, prevents more of the tray edges being visible. But the wicks are important because the trays hold water for 3 to 4 weeks, and to really take advantage of that, you would need to use the wicks, and I would recommend you use wicks, because if you don't use the wicks, you're really not taking advantage of the benefit that the system doesn't really have to be watered that often. And then we have the overflow tubes here. You can see they go onto the bottom of the tray. I'll show you kind of here behind me. Let me just stop sharing real quick here. So if you, so we got the trays here. We got on the bottom of the tray, you have the overflow tubes. So, and then I just wanted to show you the booster. So we got the booster here. So the booster, and it's sometimes a little hard to see on a picture, it just drops in the tray like this. So I've had a lot of questions for people saying, how does this work? Because people trying to figure out how it fits. So it just kind of drops in the tray like that. So it's pretty easy. So one trick with the overflow tubes here, use a little Vaseline to kind of make attaching the tubes a little easier. If you don't use Vaseline, or it can be hard. It can be super hard to get the tubes on. Reason why we use the tubes, so is because the overflow tubes are aligned with each other, right? So if you would just start watering and you did not have those hoses attached, a lot of the water would just fall straight down into the drain pipe below. So it would take a long time for you to fill up your wall, which so you just want to make sure you have those attached. And then the leaf screens just prevent any clogging of the drain pipes. I'm going to show you a quick time lapse of an installation that kind of gives you a good view of what it looks like. This installation was done on a concrete wall, which is probably the hardest thing to do. Typically you would be installing onto drywall or, plywood. So concrete is possible as well. But since you only have 4 penetrations per grid, it still is doable. I mean, if you had to attach every single tray to the wall, that would be a feat, right? That would be it would take you a while to do. So, but like I said, installing the grids is just the hardest part. If you've done it once, I mean, you know how to do it. In this installation, they also added some drip lines that actually attach to a water machine. Since the wall is pretty high, so to water this, they just hook up a water machine to fill the top trays. I mean, as soon as your grids are up, that the trays go up really fast. And here you can see kind of the hookup for the water machine, and then the drip, the fill tube just goes to the top here. But it's kind of nice to see how it's installed if you've never done it before. So, and then plants, they follow pretty quick and easy process. So this installation was done in about half a day, maybe a little longer, but with 3 people. So yeah, this scenario is probably the hardest to do. It's the concrete. That's yeah. The watering, that's like I said, the trays hold water for 3 to 4 weeks. How it's gravity will do a lot of the work for you. Typically, you would start filling the top, and then the water will just flow down. And then typically, depending on how it's set up, the bottom tray would have no drain holes. I mean, there are situations when it's more automated that you can have the bottom connected to a drain or a gutter. But a lot of times, if you just manually watering or watering with a water machine, you would have a tray that has no drain holes on the bottom. So a couple of tricks with the watering, because you don't want to water to overflow on the bottom, right? So because you have no drain holes in the bottom, there's no drain or anything if it's a manual setup. So typically you would start watering the top. And then when you get to 2/3 of the wall, you want to stop watering. And then just kind of let the water drain out to the bottom. And then what you typically would want to do is just top off your bottom trays, right? So I think most people like to start on the top. The water starts running out, and then they kind of go down with the wand as well to kind of speed things up a little bit. But when water starts coming into that, right here, the 2/3 part of the wall, make sure you stop watering because you don't want to overfill that bottom tray. Because the nice thing about the system itself is that the grid also acts like a waterproof, membrane in a way, because it creates a air gap between the trays and the back, or the wall, right? So you will never have any water penetration from the back. The only time you can have water coming onto your floor is really if you are not careful and overflow the bottom. So what I always say is just take your time watering. I've seen people make the mistake that they get in a hurry and just start dumping water in there, not paying attention. And then that's when you can get into trouble at times. So, but that's with a lot of time with installation as well. Take your time to measure it out. because taking the time to really do the job right from the start will save you a lot of time at the end. So just measure it out twice if you have to. But that's one thing I sometimes see people just being a little too impatient, and that's when you get into trouble. So the system can be set up a whole bunch of different ways. It can be automated as well. So here's just a little diagram, but it's really works like any other tray system. Gravity will help you. So if you have a automated system, typically you would have a solenoid valve connected to your water feed. The water feed goes up, and then it fills your trays, and the water just kind of cascades down until it's caught by drain pipe or gutter if it's automated. If it's not, the water will flow into the bottom trays with no holes. So, but if you ever come across a automated system, it always would have or should have a drain underneath it. So if anything goes wrong, that you don't start flooding the space, when you're not on site and the water might turn on. So. Some problems people have seen with the system. The top root rot, fungus gnats. You can see some of the products that really work well, but the big deal really is just, I think people tend to put too much water in the system. One thing I would have to stress is make sure you let the water or the trays dry out more, so don't just top off the trays if there's still water in it, because then you really are going to get those problems, root rot and fungus gnats. I mean, this is really all caused by, just topping off the wall without really looking at, do I really need to put water in it? Like I said, 3 to 4 weeks, that's all you really need to water. And if you do more than that, you're going to cause a lot of issues, right? So the system was designed to have a buffer of those 3 to 4 weeks. So take advantage of it. So it's, and if you don't, you're going to get into a lot of issues. Fungus gnats, though, sometimes, it's something that comes from the grower, and it's not due to your fault by overwatering or whatever. So that it still can be an issue. So, I think the yellow sticky traps work natural. You can add to the water and water it within the system. Mealybug is probably a big issue, and it's hard to get rid of. So one thing I always say is make sure you check your wall on a frequent basis to make sure there's no. So if you see a pest, try to get to it really early, right? So typically that's really the only way to kind of prevent mealybug from getting in there. If you have it in there really bad, I mean, you can keep it at bay, but it's never going to go away unless you get to it early. So if we're talking about fertilization, so with our system and any living wall system, you want to not over fertilize, right? So you want to only fertilize when it's really necessary. So when you notice your leaves are getting paler, then fertilize. Because with a living wall, it's we want to have healthy plants, but we do not want to have plants that grow too fast or overactive. We want to really have a controlled growth, but we don't want anything to grow too fast or too quickly, because it's just going to cause a lot of extra maintenance, and I'll go into that here in a little bit as well. But so just kind of keep that in mind. So fertilize whenever needed. One big issue is insufficient lighting. So lighting is super important. So if you have not good lighting or actually supplemental lighting that is for the living wall, you could run into some issues that your wall is not performing well. And the only solution for that would be just adding more lights. So pruning for a living wall is important. There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, if you don't prune well, especially for plants that grow upright, if you don't prune them in time, they get to a point where you can't really prune them anymore because they're too leggy. And if you start pruning them at that point, you just create big holes in your wall. So make sure to top out, ags and I think arboreocolas. If you ever use those need to be pruned on a regular basis. I've seen Ficus burgundies in walls as well. Those need to be topped out so they don't get leggy. And also, if you have pothos, any philodendrons, any trailing plants, they need to be kept to a reasonable size as well. A reason for that is because there's a lot of plants in your wall. So if certain plants start taking over, they will choke out plants underneath. Eventually it will cause holes, but it also will cause a lot of dead material in your wall, which also will attract more bugs. So just kind of keeping the wall clean. So make sure you get all the dead material out of there. Keep it nice, and you want to keep that nicely pruned. So you prevent a lot of issues down the line, right? So if you don't stay on top of it, down the line, you'll create a lot of extra work for yourself. So I would say just make sure you prune and then keep the wall clean, because that's one of the major issues when you get bugs and diseases in your wall as well. So that's a big one, really. Just wanted to show some, pictures of different installations. So, I mean, the system is really made to, you can do a lot of things with it. So this is a project in New York. So the system has been used for large installations. So this is about a 10-story high project, actually in Prague. So, I mean, I love green walls. They're great, but they do require a little extra attention. So if you just stay on top of it, just on a regular basis, just kind of keep it pruned, keep it clean, you prevent a lot of headaches down the line. So we have mobile versions as well. I do want to start opening it up for questions. So what you can do is just shoot me a. Some people already have done this. So. Okay, so I got a question here. So where does the bottom tray drain to? Well, that depends, right? So if it's a hand-watered system, it doesn't drain to anything. So then you have to be really careful how you water your wall. So you want to stop watering when the whole wall is filled about 2/3 of the way. Then you stop, and then you just want to top off your bottom tray. If it's more automated, or you have the possibility of having it drain down at the wall, you can do a gutter or a drain pipe that drains the water away. So I did say 3 to 4 weeks. It depends on the size of your trays as well, right? And it depends on some of the environment. So not each installation is going to be the same. So there's definitely times when trays don't hold enough water. So I think typically, and it's up to you to kind of find out when you would need the water. But the 3 to 4 week watering cycles, that's on average what we've seen, and what we've gotten on feedback from customers. So it really depends. If you have the 4-inch tray, it holds 2 weeks of water. The trays for 6-inch and 8-inch plants typically hold that 2 to 3 weeks of water, but it all depends on each installation. There can be definitely some changes. So the plywood does not have to be waterproofed. I mean, I think sometimes it's good for customers to kind of reassure them, but you will never get any water on the back. I mean, you can use marine grade plywood as well, but it's not necessary. Yeah, and then I got a comment. So you install plywood when you have concrete. That's definitely easier. Although you have the grids, right? So the grids probably, it would be as hard to install the grids as your plywood. So you kind of doubling it up, maybe. I don't know. So it's really up what you're most comfortable with. So good question. So, and I forgot to actually, I think I missed one slide. So somebody just pointed this out. So hold on here, see if it's in here. So there is a top to the, here we go. So make sure when you install the grids, so there's a top to it. So typically it would say top on the top of the grid. Some of the grids, when they get cut, you might lose that, but they still have numbers on the panel. So just make sure your numbers are the right side up. And then after you install, you kind of cut off the top piece. There's a little top piece you don't need. It's actually the piece that has the top written on it. So you can kind of cut that off, and makes for a nicer, cleaner installation. So the panels can be really cut with any saw. So we typically should, or we can pre-cut those for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But it's polypropylene, the backing, so it really cuts easily with basically any saw. Yeah, I mean, somebody made the comment here, you will not install a living wall without proper lighting. I agree with that. So if they don't are prepared to offer proper lighting, it's really you really shouldn't do it. All right. So is there any more questions? Yeah. So I think some people are already answering the questions here on there. So there we go. All right. It looks like there's no more questions. Yeah, if there's no more questions, I would love to thank you all for your time. I will provide you with my information here on the end. So if there's ever any, if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can scan the QR code, but I think you all know where to find me. So. All right. You can unmute yourself as well as if you want to just ask a question that way. You can always feel free to I'll just share my email here as well in the chat so everybody has that. My phone number. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. So you should all have that information now in the chat. And I do have a list of, I guess somebody asking about plants. I do have a list of plants we do recommend, so I can share that with everybody as well afterwards. So. And I'm just kind of trying to go over, make sure I got all the questions answered. All right. No, I think that was it. Thank you so much, everybody. If there's anything I can do for you, just reach out and would love to help you.